Everybody likes my sweater. It was given to
Good morning. We welcome you to the worship service of Our Christian Church, and we are so glad that you're here. I'm half here. My other half is in Kentucky.
I'm there.
I want to stay up there with your sister and take care of her this week. I'll be going back next week to pick her up on the 22nd. So we'll be prayer for her and sister Lucy. Her replacement done. She's going to plan. She doesn't move very well. We're working with her. Miss Neil's daughter is an accident of 3 units. Catholic is she's being well, we're glad that you're here. God bless you. Remember, we'll be having a Christmas Eve service on Thursday, December the 24th at 11 p.m. And there will not be a Wednesday service that night. Thursday service at 11 o'clock, a Christmas Eve service. Let's begin our worship with hymn number 93, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, singing first and last. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn. On earth mercy mild, God and sin reconciled. Joyful all ye nations cry, join the triumph of the sky. When angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Heralds sing, glory to the newborn King. Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and light to all be free, friends with thee, singing his name and his glory high. On that kingdom, on that joy, for to bring us from our fear is the second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Our first song will be hymn number 140, We Three Kings, hymn 100. And again, we will be singing the first and the last stanza only. You will notice whenever I'm reading the song, there are 2 stanzas. That's because for some reason, when I'm singing, I get out of breath quicker than when I'm preaching. So we just make 2 stanzas and 2 songs. First and the last stanza on the last stanza. Following Our Father, how thankful we are to you for the blessings that you sent to us, for the care you've taken over us this week and for this time that we can come together. I thank you for our nation that still allows us to listen to your word. Pray for this nation, Father, for it seems that many are turning away from your word. Many, Father, don't even want to see the Bible in any public place. Many that do not want your word spoken. Father, I pray for leadership in our nation. Leadership that read your word. Leadership, Father, that would live your word. For leadership to be an example of godliness to set before our nation. Pray, Father, for our senators and representatives we've sent to Washington to represent us, care for our nation. Pray again that among those you people that read and know your word, pray for the Supreme Court, whose rulings, Father, in these last few years been against your word, have taken our nation in a direction we no longer approve of. Father, I thank you that we still have men and women who love our country, who love the freedoms that we have, and that are willing to put their lives in danger. Pray for those who go into our military to serve some very distant and dangerous countries. I pray that you watch over them, protect them, and bring them back home safely. God has special needs on their parents. Continue to pray for recent recoveries for those difficult to be with them. Be with Margaret. So good to have her here today with us to see her out. Be with her and bless all of the family. Pray for Jerry to continue to be with him. Susan, as she continues his recovery from her stroke, with his mom. God, we pray for those in the military, but for these five we want to mention specifically. For Brian, Joshua, Lane, Zach, and Ian. Those in family here, be with them, Father. For Kyle Chandler, as he goes, Father, my sister-in-law, when she recovers from the surgery, she will Miss Nail's daughter, she recovers from the accident. Watch over that thing. Father, release us to pray for Dr. long-term death. We continue to pray for him to make recompense of peace for the 4-year-old peace culture. All these things I ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Reading numbers number 482. I gave my life for number 482. And again, singing the first and last stanza. I gave my life for thee, precious blood, and thou wast ransomed me, and great the price. I gave my life for thee, what hast thou given for me? I gave my life for thee, what hast thou given for me? And God hath brought to thee, and from thy home of salvation full and free, my pardon and my love. I bring rich gifts to thee, one man thou brought to me. I bring rich gifts to thee, thou brought to me. Paul is instructing the church there regarding communion. Verses 26 through 30 mentions 3 things. One, that communion is a testimony that by sharing in this communion time, we testify with proclaim Jesus Christ, his death, and the cross of Calvary. Second, it says it's a time for examination of ourselves. Look inwardly to see if we're living as Christ wants us to live. Then verses 29 to 30 of the judgment of the failure to look inside. The failure of time. Failure to observe communion and the way that the Lord wanted us to live. May it be time for you. Testimony, examination, Father, I do thank you for this time, that we might be able to meet around the table and in so doing, Father, testify of our love for you because you first loved us. Kind Father, for us to look inside, to measure ourselves not by others, but by your Son Jesus. That we might humble ourselves before you. In this remembrance of what Jesus did for us. Let's be strong and take Father, for praise in Jesus' name. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we call the chapter on love. In the 13th chapter, the 3rd verse, it says, "For I give all that I have in common to charity, that profit nothing." I can give some, I guess, everybody feel. Some give because I just think it's the right thing to do. But giving with love is what God wants us to do. If we don't have the love of the kingdom, then when we give, it doesn't leave with Him if you really want to do it. God loves a cheerful giver. You know someone that wants to do it. Neither can this worship. God is extra check for grace. You want to be sure that God is offering you that extra love. So He's not here. But He sent His check to someone to Him. May your giving today be with love because of Jesus. Father, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for us. You've blessed us more than we deserve. You've blessed us in so many ways, Father. We just want to bow down and say thank you, thank you, thank you. Pray that now you'll bless the gift that's brought to you this offering time. And bless the one who gives, Father. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
is probably a song I'm telling not been able to find in activities, but this song has just laid on my mind for many weeks, and so I'd like to do it right this morning. You did it anyway. You prayed past the flood as the angels walked you. You already knew just how to cross the field, how deep the spirit would go, how sharp the thorns would be, and that your Father would forsake you in your agony. You did it anyway. You walked on that hill, and the sounds of sacrifice are ringing still. You knew the magnitude of the price you had to pay, but for me, you did it anyway. You knew your closest friend would turn their backs on you and leave you all alone to do what only you could do. But one was sad to say, because your heart to believe was knowing there were those who never would believe. You did it anyway. You walked on up that hill, and the sounds of sacrifice are ringing still. You knew the magnitude of the price you had to pay, but for me and you, He did it anyway. You knew my righteousness would never be enough. It wasn't out of beauty, it was out of love. You did it anyway. You walked on that hill, and the sounds of sacrifice are ringing still. You knew the magnitude of the price you had to pay, but for me, you did it anyway. You did it anyway.
This time, we have a church. At this time, our children are time and are going to get a count as to how many are current Bible reading. I'm getting older and my eyesight's failing me, so raise your hands high. Well, maybe not that high. That came up about 20 or 20. Okay, we had 25, and so, this is one of those issues, let your conscience be your guide. But it's good that we have folks that are making an effort to read their Bibles in year. It's the Word of God that we stand on, and it's the Word of God that we try to hold up our lives and our testimonies. So I appreciate those that do revival in the year, and also those that are free, not necessarily revival in the year. Let's stand this morning for the reading of our morning text. And if you're able to do that, I want to focus in on these 3 verses this morning. I want us to look at the Gospel of John. We alluded to that during our Sunday school hour this morning, but I want us to look at the Gospel of John, and we're going to be reading verses 3 through 5. So the Gospel of John, chapter 1, and verses 3 through 5. It says, "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it." You may be seated. Too many times we look about our world today, and we know that the light of God's Word, the light of His presence, His power, and everything displayed everywhere in our world today is seen, and yet we find that we also live in a world where people are turning away from that light and not recognizing the light that is there, that is here for us. The well-known Christmas carol was penned, of course, many years ago, and it said, "I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Their old familiar carols play, and loud and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth and goodwill toward men. And in despair I bowed my head, there is no peace on earth, I said. For hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men." We look at those 2 stanzas, those 2 verses of this carol, and you know how apt it is for the world in which you and I live today. Some years ago at Christmas, or some years, it seems like when we live through the course of a year and we survey the history that's unfolding us before our very eyes, it seems that sometimes Christmas is out of place. Do you ever feel that way in your life? That sometimes Christmas seems out of place. And I think about the year in which we live, and I begin to seriously come to the conclusion that perhaps this is one of those years. We look about us, we see unrest, it seems like, at every corner. Not just in our country, but also on our planet. We are mindful of terrorism today. An attack in Paris, and more recently, the shooting in San Bernardino, California. We turn on the news and we listen to accounts of rioting and so forth and protests in the city of Chicago. There are people that attack each other politically for the purpose of tearing down somebody else instead of just standing for what you believe on and promoting that. The whole world is a firecracker, it seems like sometimes, and we wonder when somebody's going to light that match and the whole thing go off. And so we think of that. Some feel in our world today like taking the wreath from their door and pinning it to the grave of their home. There was an Iowa minister who was asked to write a Christmas sermon for his church's periodical, his newsletter. Just before he sat down to write it, his wife died. He said he was forced to view Christmas in a new and different light. Some of us here today have gone through our griefs. Some of us here have gone through griefs and losses and some of that in our lives. And so Christmas time, instead of a time of joy and rejoicing, may be a time of weeping and mourning. Can somebody turn that off? think about the world in which we live, and many people today live in the midst of their own griefs and forced to view Christmas in a new and different light. There's two voices today, the voice of angels and the voice of anguish. The angels cry, "Glory to God in the highest." The voice of anguish is that of Rachel weeping for her children. Rachel died, remember, in childbirth, and she was on her way buried in the town of what is now Bethlehem. So when the Babylonians began oppressing the children of Israel, the prophet Jeremiah thought that he could see Rachel coming up from the grave and along. When Herod slew the infants at Bethlehem, the gospel writer thought he could hear the voice again as he said, Rachel weeping for her children. Sometimes the voice of anguish drowns out the voice of angels and the voice of praise in the world that you and I live in. When Herod slew the infants in Bethlehem, the gospel writer spoke of that. So, is there really any reason to believe that God rules the world with truth and grace? We think today sometimes that Christmas belongs to children, and it belongs to a world that you and I have perhaps outgrown. In a world infinitely large, can we still turn to a tiny village for our faith? In a world infinitely old, can we still believe the birth of a baby is the major moment and event in history around which all things revolve? Can we? And in a closed world of cause and effect, can we still believe that God entered time and space and entered history to live amongst us? Our text today is a text that assures us that we can. It is a text that assures us that he did. Verse 5 says, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. The light shines, it was shining, and then Jesus came, and that light of Jesus Christ continues to shine in the darkness. There will always, because of that, be a Christmas in our world. Light, as you know, is better seen in darkness. When I was a boy growing up at home in Western Oregon, we had the Oregon Caves in Southern Oregon. And like caves in many other places in the world and many other places in the United States of America, they would give tours for people to go into these caves, and they would show you this and that, and the formations and the waterfalls, and on. And then pretty quick, of course, something very deafening happened, as they would turn out all the lights, and you would feel the darkness, and you would get a little frightened sometimes if you're so inclined, because you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And then about that time, somebody would light a match, and it would seem like the whole place just lit up in bright light, and you could see everything, and you could see the dark corners and all of that had been hidden. Well, light exposes the darkness, and it shines in the darkness. One little match can reach the farthest corners of darkness. Not only is it true that we keep Christmas today in an incompatible world, Christ came to an inhospitable empire when he was born. It came to pass in those days, the passage recites. What were those days like when Jesus, the light of the world, came into the world? What were the days like? Who was Caesar Augustus? Because he was the one who was in power.
Augustus, if you know anything about him, had waded to the throne through a sea of blood of his own doing. Three men shared the throne, and they agreed that they were going to murder 300 senators and 2,000 knights in order to consolidate their position of power in the empire. Well, then two of the three were eliminated, and one man alone rose to power, and he reigned. Prior to Jesus coming, he changed his name to Augustus, which is a name that means majestic. It means majesty. It means I'm the king. He declared that he was God. This is the man whose long arm reached across the great sea, the Mediterranean, and touched the carpenter of Nazareth and forced him and his wife to go to Bethlehem for the census. And so that's why we read about that in the gospel account. Over against Christ's manger, we see Caesar's throne in Rome. How great the power that baby child. Then Rome was a large place, and Bethlehem was very insignificant at that time in history. Rome made the headlines while Bethlehem could not make the back page of the newspaper. The world in which Jesus was born into. Today that's reversed though. Why? Because of the invincible Christ. The baby that was born in a manger, who grew and lived among us, was put to death, was crucified, and the church was born, and we read about his power and his influence, even in our world today. There was a Santa Claus in jail one time, looking out through the bars. A boy on the street is staring in disbelief, but he said it's true. St. Nicholas, you may know the story, spent 9 years in jail. He was Metropolitan Bishop of Myra. He was a special friend of children, and he was known to be kind and generous. Well, during his time, he fell into disfavor with the emperor, and Diocletian arrested him. He tortured him and then imprisoned him, where he remained until Constantine released him in 312 AD. But Christianity could not be imprisoned. There will always be a Christmas. Always be a Christ who is of what Christ was introduced in the world by the name Emmanuel. Isaiah spoke prophetically about who Jesus would be called 700 years before Jesus left heaven and came to earth. Christ was introduced by the name Emmanuel. That's a term that means God with us. God is with us. God is with us. He is not just with us, you see, on one day throughout the year. In fact, when people began studying some of the history of it, December 25th, the birth of Jesus. Most of us know that. You may not know that there's been other days for Christmas that have also been observed throughout history. November 18th is one of those days. January 6th has been used. March 25th and also March 28th have been pinpointed and used for Christmas, celebrating the birth of Jesus. December 25th was chosen because it was the day that the pagans of that time worshiped the sun. Christians at that time then deliberately chose that as the day to observe Christ's birth, as they said, we worship not the Son, but we worship the one who made the Son. And so they began celebrating Christmas on December the 25th. So Christmas means God with us. God's the creator of all things. Every day of the year, He is with us. Christmas also declares that God is for us. It declares that He's with us. It also states emphatically that God is for us today. We would not want Him with us if we did not know that He was for us. Would we? God is for us. Ancient people thought that sickness and misfortune and tragedy were signs that God was angry. You know, some of that is still prevalent in our world today as people still hang on to some of those beliefs. But people lived in fear. They did not know, you see, that God is for us. A poem was once written by somebody years ago entitled "To a Telephone Directory." The writer thought of all the people represented by those phone numbers that he saw in the telephone directory, which now I think is almost a thing of the past. And he thought of all the bad news that had been shared over the phone lines back in those days, and all the tragedies and all the stuff that people had talked about. As he surveyed that telephone directory, and he wished in his poem that he might call every one of them and give them some good news. Not just the bad news that historically had been shared. It is possible to do that, he thought. But the best of all good news is for us. It says, "Unto you is born this day a Savior." God is with us. God is for us. A Savior. It's really quite amazing to think that God is with us. More amazing still to think He was born of a woman in a stable. Most amazing of all, He is us. He's with us. He's for us. He's here in Christ. He is in us. There was a man who lived in Hungary. One December, he was helping the refugees from Soviet oppression several years ago. He was arrested and he was jailed. While he was spending time in prison, he made a mark each day. And so he knew when Christmas was going to come. After his release, someone said, "You know, somebody owes you Christmas." Well, this individual disagreed. He said that on Christmas Day, he wanted one gift. His diet had always been, as he was in prison, one bowl of thin soup, raw, or one bowl of rice. And on this Christmas Day, desperately a piece of meat. He prayed. When the guard came that day, he had two bowls. One held his thin soup. The other held his rice. And on top of the bowl of rice was a big, fat fork.
He had had him created. Put himself instead on that someone hidden in this monstrous world in the one word or one jar is fear. Someone said that at Christmas, man is almost what God meant him to do. Christmas proclaims the high promise of God in us. This morning, we're going to close our message and invite Him to all of us. Here's God in you today. With us, for us, in us. It's God in you today. He came and he said that is the past. He came. This morning, if you have a decision to be made for Jesus Christ, we're going to give you an opportunity to make that decision. Maybe it's to be official. Maybe it's a time to pray for your fellowship. In this congregation, you're already a baptized believer. Maybe it's a time to rededicate your life to Scripture. This morning, we're going to sing number 489, the first from the last verses. Try this, give me your heart. Give me your heart. And really, that's where it all starts. Give her life. Please stand with me. First and last verse. Give me thy heart, says the Father above. Love is so precious to Him as our love. Softly He whispers wherever thou art. Faithfully trusting, and give me thy heart. Give me thy heart. Give me thy heart. Hear the soft whisper wherever thou art. From this dark world He would draw thee apart. Speaking so tenderly, give me thy heart. Give me thy heart, says the Spirit divine. All that thou hast, thy keeping reside. Grace more abounding is mine to impart. Faithful surrender and give me thy heart. Give me thy heart. Give me thy heart. Hear the soft whisper wherever thou art. From this dark world you would draw me apart. Speaking so tenderly, give me thy heart. Thank you for your time this morning. I want to mention our choir that we at 4:15 today. And after that, I'll be our evening service. That's going to be at 5 o'clock. 30. Let's close with prayer.
as we go into this we just know, we know, blessings, we feel, in our hearts and our minds, and we feel for him. And Lord, as we gather together, and pray, not only this, you said in office to do it, to it, and Lord, pray with us, and we will always provide for those who do. And may Lord, we go from this place, care of the blessing that will be received. We thank you, Lord, that we have a present close to today, we thank you, after suffering for us, and Lord, we just give you thanks for our life. Lord, I trust you, because you are faithful. Thank you, Lord, for giving them the opportunity to share the word of you.
Okay, I'm gonna go for my, I think that thing's at 12. I don't know. Bye, honey. I love you. Be careful. You going to stop and get your car?